101. My name is Hilary Milnes. I am the Senior Features Editor at Vogue Business, which is Condé Nast's first fashion business title. I have some great panelists joining me today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Camila, would you like to kick us off?
Hi, so I'm Camila Coelho. I am the founder of Camila Coelho Collection, which is my fashion label sold exclusively at Revolve, and the founder and CEO of Ella Luz, my beauty brand.
Wonderful. Payal, how about you next?
Hi, everyone. I am Payal Kadakia. I am the founder and executive chairman of Classpass, and I'm also the founder and artistic director of my very own Indian American dance company called SA.
Great. Thanks so much. And Jenny, how about you?
Hi, I'm Jenny Baxter Moser, partner at TSG Consumer. We're a global investor in consumer brands. And I work a lot in the fashion, beauty, and e-commerce space and led our investment in Revolve. So have worked closely with the Revolve team for the last 8 years and excited to be here.
Great, thanks so much. And Ryan and Adam, I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Ryan, would you like to start? And Adam, join in however you want to do it.
Hey, I'm Ryan Goldston. I'm the co-founder of APL. And Adam?
I'm Adam Goldston. I'm Ryan's twin brother and also the co-founder of APL.
Great. The beard helps differentiate.
I know.
Throws it off a little bit.
Wonderful. So I'm really excited to be chatting with you guys about starting your own brands, leading a team, and what that all entails. First, I thought it would be good to just get this out of the way. It's been a really challenging year. I think everyone can agree on that. I'd love to hear a bit about, what the past 6 months have been like. How do you lead a team in times of uncertainty? What has leadership looked like to you up against such, unexpected disruptions, I would say, to the businesses? Ryan and Adam, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think it's obviously been a super challenging time. And during the pandemic, people are making a lot of different decisions as to personally what's best for them, the things that are important to them. And one of the things at the absolute core is being active. So for us, we feel like we've created a product that allows them to go outside when they can, experience it with the product. And then when we're thinking about our actual team, it's been so weird for us because we're all so used to being together and having this collaborative environment. And now we're all in our different places. But I think it's kind of unlocked our potential and our creativity as a team because people are committed. They're working on a different schedule, something that they're comfortable with, but still really committed to the brand. And just the ideas that we were able to flow through with one another has been really great. It's been something that's different. The fact that we are a DTC business at our core, I think bodes really well for a time like this. But it's something that you never plan for. Like never in life were we planning that something like this would happen. So you have to be really nimble. I think one of the aspects of us being a young group of people that are nimble in general is that we're able to kind of change with the times and work quickly. But it's not something that we planned at all. Adam could probably shed a little bit more light on to how we work together in those aspects, but it definitely was unplanned.
So as Ryan said, I think one of the reasons we've done well in over the last 6 months, and we've had a great trajectory as a brand for over the last 10 years. But what Ryan, the point that Ryan was alluding to is that we have a very strong internal team that's self-starters. And so thankfully for us as a business, we were in a space where people started to look at their health and say, this is a very important pillar of who I am as a human. And fitness is part of health. And so people like to use our products, not only for the aesthetic, but for the functional purpose. And then our team is a bunch of self-starters where if you give them a mission and you tell them this is what we're trying to accomplish, we have full faith as leaders that they're going to go accomplish that goal. And so in a time like this where we can't physically be together, you have to have a lot of trust as you're leading a team. And I think, our team's been tremendous, and they've executed on such a high level with way more limited resources because we're all working from a distance. So I think that, at least from as the leaders of the company, that's been tremendous for us because we were really able to see and believe that our team members had these great strengths, but they made them even stronger, and they built muscles that in terms of business that they didn't even know that they had and that we didn't know we had as a team. So I think that we've been really thankful that we've been able to be as successful as we have in this period of time, because we're conscious that a lot of other people weren't. But we had a really small team, and we've always built a very nimble business because we know that so much of everything is unpredictable. So we need to be able to shift when we need to. And I think our team just did an incredible job during this time period. And we're thankful to be where we're at this moment in time.
Great. So a lot of trust, a lot of autonomy for the team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Payal, how about you? How did you find your team essentially was doing, and how did you give them the tools that they needed throughout such a hard time?
Yeah, I mean, we started this year being in, launching in 30 countries by, the beginning of 2020, and we had $1 billion valuation. It was like we were riding so high, and then within a week, being a business where people are going to offline experiences, 95% of our studios shut down within a week, and we paused all of our accounts, which basically halted all of our revenue and growth, which is very hard being a company that is as big as Classpass. So what we really had to do was go back to making hard decisions and pivoting, which was a part of our DNA. I think, Classpass launched, once again, it's business that's been around for 10 years. But over the past 6 years, we've made a lot of business model changes. We've iterated. And at the crux of it, and I think, this is the most important thing for all entrepreneurs to really think about, is why did you start your company? And how do you continue to give that same mission to your customers during this time? And for us, it's two-sided. We have partners that we needed to help survive through this pandemic. Many of them had fixed costs, employees, rent. So just getting them to survive through this was a big part of it for us, so they could continue to teach on the other end. And then the big part of it was, how do we keep people active? How do we keep them learning? How do we keep them growing? And so overnight, we literally flipped our entire product to being about virtual digital fitness. And, I still can't believe my team did it so quickly. And we have 50,000 live stream classes now on the platform. And that was a part of this concept of people still need to work out. The same thing what you guys were just saying, Ryan and Adam, like people still wanted to work out. So we needed to give it to them as easy as possible. And so that was what we did on the customer side. On the team side, we've been a company that's been very remote just because we were in so many countries. So people were used to the video conferencing, thankfully. So that wasn't as big of a shift. I mean, we definitely had to shut down some offices and, find new ways to connect. I think happy hour on Zoom just became a thing, and, doing some workouts together. We had to really think about culture in a completely different way. And I think at the top of it was, how do you make sure people feel like they're safe and healthy during this time? Obviously people are working, but there's a pandemic going on. So I think for us, safety and health was at the top of everything, of keeping people just, in a place where, in an environment where they felt safe.
Absolutely. I'm sure that was a really interesting time for you as a founder, just to see, the floor underneath you essentially just disappear for a little bit there. And I definitely want to talk more about that. But Camila, a slightly different question, because you have your team, but you also have such an engaged community that I'm sure we're looking to you for leadership and inspiration during a time where, it can feel weird to carry on with, business and content as usual. How did you navigate?
So, keeping the team, we had mainly challenges this year. I was running Camila Coelho collection and about to launch a new category, which was swim. And we ended up launching during a pandemic, which was really scary. But also we learned so much from that. And launching LLUs in the middle of a pandemic as well. We took so many learnings, and we had to shift so many things around, events that were supposed to do in person turned out to be virtual events, activations and little pop-ups. So many strategies that we had to completely change. And the main thing I've always kept in my mind is the team, how big or small your team is, we need to bond, we need to be tight together, because bumps will always happen, like a pandemic, for example, we never expected. But, if we are tight, if we're bonding, if we're communicating, if we're staying active, we're going to go through it. And it's one thing that I think has helped my team so much. We are still a very small team in both brands, but we lift each other up every day. We make sure that we support each other. And, if it's a person in a higher position than the other, we are comfortable to go on a lower position and help that person out. So that is very important. The bond between teams. I really relate to what everyone has talked about here, but, keeping the team tight and strong and bonding throughout is so important. It has been so important to us.
Great. And so it seems, obviously the past few months have taught everyone a lot about just agility and responding to unexpected situations. Jenny, from your perspective, when you're thinking about investing in a company, how do you almost look for signs of these great attributes like resilience, especially when, they're not put to the fire yet, but how do you look for those qualities?
Yeah, I mean, this has been such an incredible and fascinating time as an investor when, the pandemic impacted every single company in the portfolio all at once and in different ways. Some companies actually benefited, health and wellness driven businesses, digital driven businesses, and others were impacted with extreme headwinds, as Payal described, and we're investors in Core Power Yoga, which is a studio business. So immediately your whole business is shut down. So it really was a reminder of the importance of the agility of these teams. And we saw such a difference in the way people responded. And those companies, even the ones that were most impacted in a negative way, those companies that responded quickly and had that, as Adam and Ryan described, the teams that were just very quick to make decisions, very tightly aligned, and could navigate this in a really unique way. And those businesses were able to rebound very quickly. So it is a really important reminder. Something we always think about is, you can have a great business, a great product, consumer offering, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the team and those people behind the execution of that business that are going to make all the difference. And so we often back founders and founder operated businesses. And those founders, I think the nature of a founder really is because you have to start this from the beginning and you're dealing with bumps in the road from day one. And you often find that those founders, even if the business like Revolve, Mike and Michael and the team, the business is 17 years old, is a much larger, more scaled business now. But they acted with the agility that they, that is really from their founder core in pivoting the assortment and the marketing, revolve around the house, all of those things that I think just kind of for them harken back to their early founder days. So we really do look for that. It's a great question. How do you look for that agility? It comes down to understanding the nature of that founder, how they've approached problems from the beginning, how they think about the long-term vision for their business. It's not, it's not just one product, one concept, one idea. It's how do we evolve over time and the ability to see around corners. So we look for that as much as we're looking at the brand and the metrics and the financials of the business. We're also really evaluating the entrepreneurs and the team and their ability to navigate challenges like this.
Right. And I'm sure as entrepreneurs and leaders, it's really important to be able to see the silver linings in hard situations like this. So it sounds like you've all basically come out stronger for it. Ryan and Adam, you mentioned, just seeing that how strong the DTC model was through all of this. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how you decided to build your business as a direct-to-consumer company and how, that was basically the right choice throughout, the life of the company, and then especially so in the last few months?
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
So when Ryan and I founded APL back in 2009, Ryan had used APL as his business plan in college, and it basically got rejected. I mean, this is a short panel, so I won't tell you the full story, but it basically got rejected. They said it was never going to work because our mission was we were going to go direct to consumer. This is back in 2009. And so for us, the reason why we believe that was important is because we wanted to create an authentic and organic connection with our customer and understand from sale one who our customer was and what was going to bring them back and how do we continue to build goodwill with our customer. And so for the first 4 years of the brand, we sold only direct to consumer. We didn't do any paid marketing. So it was all organic. It was no performance marketing. It was all brand building. And so then as we continued to expand. We did go wholesale, but we looked at wholesale as profitable marketing. So when we went into a wholesale channel, they had to bring a discoverable aspect to the brand that didn't exist by itself. So if we were getting our core consumer online through social and other avenues, influencers, etc., if we're going into a retailer, they needed to bring something that we couldn't possibly do ourselves in a short enough window. And so that was the way we looked at it. But the ultimate goal was always be a very large direct to consumer brand. And like, for instance, this year we'll do probably 82% of our revenue through our own channels. And that was a goal that we were trying to work towards by the end of 2022 or early 2023. And so to be this much ahead of schedule and to do it in a way where we're constantly having an authentic and organic connection and conversation with our consumer, I think is really what's helped us scale the brand, because there's intricacies to any business, regardless of what you do, that the only way you can see it is if, well, one, if you're the one with the vision, and two, if you're the one that understands why certain things are happening. It's like, I think the way that we look at it is like the direct consumer, like cars are a really big thing to us. Like a lot of people know how to drive cars, but maybe you know how to drive your car specifically. Like there's little intricacies to it because everyone is different. And so I think when you have direct to consumer now, with all of the analytics you can see on the back end, you can then apply that to the creative that you're doing as well too. So I think like the beautiful thing about direct to consumer is that there's a balance between art and science. So it's like you put those two things together. And I think that's part of the reason why our direct to consumer plan has been so successful. And we feel like we've only skimmed the surface in terms of what's possible, because we know how large it can become. We have very few competitors on the global market. So we've grown at a rate we're comfortable with. We've never actually raised outside capital. So we're in the 11th year, essentially, but 10th year of selling of the business. And this is only, we've only been doing paid acquisition, like paid marketing, for 14 months. And so we built so much of the brand organically, and without direct to consumer, it wouldn't have been possible. So it was always a goal of ours, but we wanted to do it at a pace at which we were comfortable with, where our customer felt like they were growing with the brand and that they were helping the brand grow. And I think like that has been a key pillar to why we have been as successful as we have in terms of direct to consumer.
Right. I think that's a really apt point, which is, founders today, they need to have customers written into their businesses, because it has to grow and evolve with what they're telling you, and all of the data points that you can gather on an audience today are really going to be at the core of all the decisions that are being made. Camila, tell us more about the swimwear launch. I'm sure going ahead with a new product line during a pandemic wasn't an easy decision to make, but where, did you field, your audience input, your customer input, and how did you make that decision?
So with, before actually creating my brands, it was really like, I created these brands thinking of this community that I have, right? My followers. And I feel very fortunate to have, their feedback on everything. And that feedback I take into my design meetings with CTC, I take into my product development meetings, and that is gold. But when, we're about to launch our swimwear back in March, we delayed it a month, and it was really scary because first, it was a new category and I wanted to be successful. I was very passionate about swim, and the pandemic hit, but then I've always tried to follow my heart since day one. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to do it. I'm not sure if this is going to sell. Maybe people will be, wearing swim in their backyards, and maybe they will buy it. Maybe they will have some desire for it, and let's launch. So I had to believe in myself, have to believe in my idea, even though the pandemic was going on and no one was leaving the house, like literally. And it was a huge surprise for us because all of our drops sold out really fast. We basically had to recut all the styles. And it was a lesson to me but for sure, like one thing we focused a lot was to create and focused a lot of our time in content, right? Virtual content. How can people relate themselves, even staying at home? How can they see the swim and want to purchase it and buy it? So we focused a lot of our time and effort into making great content. But it was a great learning and surprise. Like, I feel like now for 2021, we're spending and investing even more for swim next year, which hopefully we won't have a pandemic. So yeah, but it was a scary time. We definitely learned from it. It wasn't like it was perfect. Yes, we sold really well, but we learned a lot from it. And with Ella Luz, we launched during a pandemic, and it was, again, me following my heart. We were supposed to launch this brand back in May, and a few months went by, and I was so positive of what, positive and happy of what this brand stands for and what it is, that I was comfortable. And again, I listened to my heart and I launched it, and it was a very successful launch. But we are working so hard every single day to make this brand desirable, and the products. No one is leaving the house. I mean, we are not doing the events we were thinking of doing. So it's been a huge learning process, but again, with a strong team and a bonded team, we're making it work. But it was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Payal, I would love to hear from you. I know, Classpass has such an active community, and looking at the business now, it's different than it was at the beginning of the year. How, as you were navigating the situation in real time, did you make sure that, your customers and the Classpass users felt like they were being taken along and considered in the decisions that you were making, which, I'm sure at times were not very easy?
The first thing we did is we froze everyone's account. I know that sounds like pretty basic, but when people are paying a subscription and it's a monthly cost that is, and especially right now with so much uncertainty, we wanted to just make sure everyone knew that we were in advance thinking about what their reaction was going to be. So to us, that was, and like I said, that was a very hard move for us to do from a business perspective, but we knew it was the right thing to do for all of our customers. And, once we did that, I think for us, and we're starting to see some markets light back up, which has been exciting. I mean, once again, we're in so many places, so we get to kind of, figure out what's going on in New Zealand or in Sweden and kind of figure out how we bring people back into fitness. And from that, we're really just doing a lot of research, right? So we have so much survey data on, like, how do people feel about how comfortable they are going to class? Do they want to go back to studios once, things are safer? What would they do if, they had a hybrid model where they could still do, workouts at home and go to class? So what we're trying to do is really just learn what the customer behavior is going to evolve to. I think this is, once again, we can't say, hey, go to class right now. I always think about it. If I don't feel safe going to class yet, I am not going to be telling my customers to. And so I think, once again, it depends on the market you're in. But we are very much trying to figure out what the pulse of the customer is in terms of behavior. And we've been really looking hardcore at that. Even though we have video products and we want to give people new ways of working out, we really are still betting on the fact that people are going to go back, and we don't know when that's going to be. One of the exciting things that we've been doing in the meantime is, the vision of Classpass, yes, has always been around fitness classes, but we really want people to be doing other experiences. So right before the pandemic hit, we actually started putting like massages and cryotherapy and other wellness, different like nails and pedicures and things on the platform, and people were loving it. And then obviously the pandemic hit and that stopped. But we realized, through this, like, people are getting more and more comfortable with either like at-home experiences or going to, get their nails done sort of outside and other experiences. So we've been really doing a lot of analysis and kind of going back to the beginning a little bit and trying to test new supply, test new product offerings. And that's really what it is. Like you said, it's, entrepreneurship is really about that hustle. It's about, what Jenny was saying. It's like, how do you just keep going? And we're just trying to think about different ideas. We, once again, like, want to just keep people active, want to keep people learning and engaging in their community as much as they can. But once again, safety is the most important thing.
Right. Absolutely. And so again, at the center of that is the customer data and the knowledge that you have about your community, which, sounds like across the board. If you don't know your customer, those decisions are going to be a lot harder. Jenny, can you talk a bit about that? It's funny almost to hear Adam talk and Ryan talk about being shut down with the DTC model, you know, a little over 10 years ago, because now it is, you know, in the very fabric of how people are shopping and consuming. So how do you look at that model in terms of, you know, when people are going to be pitching you right now, and how do you push it forward at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think we as consumer investors have always tried to kind of get ahead of where each of these categories is going. And direct to consumer and digital commerce and engaging with consumers through digital has been evolving for a long time. But in this environment, it's only accelerated. I mean, I think a lot of people are saying we've fast forwarded 3 or 4 years of progress for a lot of businesses in terms of shifting to a more digital model. So we continue to look at that as an important data point. I think businesses that don't have as much control over their distribution and don't have that direct relationship with the consumer, it's going to be more and more difficult to grow and navigate as things both accelerate, but there's all of these kind of exogenous factors that you have to be able to adapt your business model. And having that direct relationship with the consumer is so valuable. Not only do you feel, the consumer feels more connected with the brand, but you have all of this data to really understand the nuances of how that consumer behaves, how they'll respond to certain marketing, how to customize the user experience. So we're certainly, as investors, more and more focusing on businesses that have a direct to consumer element to their business, or purely direct to consumer. And also, I think COVID has not only accelerated our businesses within the portfolio, but it's also, I think, evolved how we think about consumer investing. And we're starting to look to kind of broaden the aperture of what we deem to be consumer businesses and looking more at consumer technology businesses, because consumers are engaging with all of these different services now in a digital way, whether that's their banking or how they consume content or health and wellness. So we've actually seen this as an exciting opportunity to kind of broaden the segments and categories within consumer that we invest in, where we can bring our consumer expertise to businesses that were maybe more technology driven, that now are realizing they're actually consumer brands at the end of the day, and need to think about how they build a global brand and engage with the consumer in a more emotional way than being purely a technology business. So it's been a really exciting time.
I'm sure. And I think we're going to see a really interesting burst of new businesses coming out of this. But to kind of look at the other side of the coin, from Jenny's perspective, I'm interested to hear how you all went about deciding whether or not to receive outside funding or do any sort of venture capital raising as you were starting your businesses. Ryan and Adam, you mentioned that you are entirely bootstrapped. Is that right?
Yeah. So
how did you decide that?
Honestly, it started from the fact that we had a dream. And I think this is one thing that anyone that's an entrepreneur or trying to become an entrepreneur should keep in mind, is that when you're creating a consumer products company, which we've done, like a brand, you have a vision and you're trying to sell people on that, but it's in your head. You can only articulate it to a certain point. It's a feeling, it's an emotion, and there's something that you see in the future and that you believe that you can get it there. But trying to tell people when it's something that's so different from what's existed before, I don't want to say it's impossible, but they always want proof. And so I found that when Adam said, like when I was in the entrepreneurship program at USC, I used it as my business plan. And my professors told me to be a massive failure. And one of the things they said is, show me someone that's done it before, and then I'll tell you it's a good idea. And I said, if I could show you someone that's done it before, I wouldn't tell you it was my idea. And so we set out, started the company. We had the benefit of getting banned by the NBA, our shoes, because they instantly make you jump higher 4 months after we launched the brand. So you have this seminal moment that brings all of this cash into the business. We had amortized the cost of our tooling so that we could afford to pay for the product. It's part of the reason why we priced them at $300, which then put us in this luxury strata of where our product was. And then we had this other idea of building luxury performance. And for us to do that, no one believed in it. No one thought that you could take athletic product and do it in a luxurious way and sell in these luxury environments. So we almost had to do it because no one saw the same vision until we proved it. And then it got to the point where we built our business in a profitable way. So we always focused on profitability as opposed to just growth for the sake of growth. So we said we look to create value and not chase revenue. And that principle, having a tight team of people that are super committed to that vision, buying in, are amazing people and amazing executors, went so far for us. And then it's instilled in your business. So we've been able to have great growth, be very profitable, build out this category, use, as Adam said, the wholesalers as profitable marketing. There's amazing benefits that come along with it, but we've always been in a situation, now it's changed. Now there's a bunch of people that do want to invest and believe in the vision and see where it can go. But Adam and I have had this idea in our mind as to where we thought the brand was going to be and the potential there, but it was more or less that we had to prove it, as opposed to people understanding some technology play, like, oh, you're doing a cloud data storage warehousing, like all of these different things. We had a brand, we had a vision, we had a new category we're trying to create, and we had to create it for people to be interested.
Right. And Payal, ClassPass has navigated rounds of funding, and I'm sure explaining the ClassPass premise wasn't so easy before it existed. So can you tell us a bit about what those meetings were like, how you handled people who questioned what you saw being possible, and just any advice for someone who is considering raising funding?
Yeah, I mean, even though we've raised a lot of capital, I mean, I think what Ryan was saying is completely right. You're selling a vision that doesn't exist, and you really need to convince people on the other side of the table to let you lead that and let you keep going with it and give you capital for it. And, in the earliest days of ClassPass, it took me 3 years before I could raise any substantial money. And thankfully, I had great family and friends who helped me get started. I knew ClassPass was going to be a capital intensive business. So, it's a little bit different when you're building a marketplace model that has like a local dynamic play. It's a little bit more like the Uber models. It just requires capital to kind of get it started, get the sort of, market growing. And it's also a winner takes all kind of market where you don't want every single city to have a different type of ClassPass, because then you actually lose the breadth of what the value proposition is. And, there were points like in our history where that happened, where we had to raise even more capital to make sure that, we could maintain our position. So there's definitely a lot of like business dynamics that went on to how and why ClassPass raised money. But I think the biggest lesson like I have learned from all of it was, to stay authentic to my vision and make sure that the people around the table were the ones I wanted. And, early on, like I remember when I was raising my Series A, I went out to Silicon Valley. This was like my third time. And for anyone who hasn't been out to Silicon Valley, it looks like a bunch of dentist office. And I remember going out there, and after, once again, it's my third time doing it, and I had just gotten no's and no's and no's. And this time it was completely different because we had launched the ClassPass model and we had this like hockey stick growth that everyone is always looking for in the tech world. And I felt like every single person was calling me. Like I felt like everyone was like, Payal, can you do dinner tonight? Can you come to this like baseball game with us? And all of a sudden I actually started like not trusting the model a little bit, because I was like, I was here last year and no one believed in this. And so I luckily, had one of my investors, Fritz Landman, who I just trusted. Like I knew he got this like thing that was in my head, as Ryan was saying. It's like this idea that you can't fully explain until it's starting to get executed. And he got it every part of the way. And he was the only person I trusted taking capital from, because I knew he would let me execute on that vision. So it really comes down to making sure you have the right people around the table when you are going to take that capital. But on the flip side, every business doesn't need that much capital. And I think that's an important point. Like I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I need to raise like money. And they think that that's sort of like a sign of success. And that's not exactly true. Every business is different. Some businesses can reach profitability quicker than others. And other, businesses have different dynamics. As I was saying, like ClassPass needed a bunch of capital to kind of create its moat and create its sort of, customer engagement and sort of network effect where one customer would tell another. And all those things take a lot of money and resources to do. But once again, like I think raise the amount of money you need. Obviously, you never want to run out of cash. So people always say, make sure you have at least, 12 to 18 months of a runway in the bank if you're going to be burning through any of it and focusing on growth. But, outside of that, it's really on a business by business basis to raise capital.
Absolutely. And it's definitely a means to an end. It's not, the capital for capital's sake on its own. Camila, do you want to talk a bit about timing when it comes to launching a brand and knowing, okay, this is the the right time for my audience. You know, you're coming from a position where you had your followers who were active and engaged. At what point do you say like, okay, now I want to do something bigger?
That's a great question. You know, I've been on social media for 10 years now, and since the very early beginning, I started as a hobby on YouTube. It turned to be my career. I mean, I didn't even know you could get revenue out of, you know, social media back then, but it turned into my business. And my biggest goal in the beginning was to make my name stronger, right? To then maybe create my brand. I noticed that my name was becoming stronger, and I said to myself, yes, I mean, this dream of having my own brand comes from the early, I mean, 9 years from now ago. And it was a question I kept asking myself, when is the right time? And I realized that there isn't the right time. There is no such thing. And I followed my heart. Because I was, you know, I had a strong following and I was also working with other brands, I used that also as an experience. Like when I was doing collabs, I did a collab with Lancome, I did collabs with a few brands, and I used that as an experience for my own self. I did not know if I was going to create my brand by myself, if I was going to have an investor. And there's different types of investors as well, right? There's an investor who can put capital. There's investors who can give you like the know-how and the give you support. But the timing was really in my heart. When I created CCC, I remember with Revolve, I was approached by them, and I've already wanted to create my fashion label as well as my beauty brand. And I actually thought my beauty brand was going to come out first, but then the right opportunity, the right partner came in, and I was like, this is it. In my heart, I said, yes, this is it for CCC. And with Ella Luz, it was, you know, this is like my biggest dream. And at one point I thought I was going to do it by myself. But then I also didn't want to give up all this other business that I have, you know, which is like working with other brands and in my platform and my community. I knew that doing it by myself, I was going to have to let a lot of things go to focus more on the brand. And so it's a balance, you know, and a lot of people ask me, should I get an investor? Should I not get an investor? It's really personal. It really depends on what you want, what you need, what you can do, what are you willing to give up or not. And so for me, you know, with Ella Luz, for example, we have an investor, but I also invested in this company. And for me, it was really in the scale. How can I be 100% involved, but still have some support? But the timing was really in my heart. The right moment, it just clicks, you know it. There's really no right time. I asked myself that a lot of times, and I didn't, how do you call it? My Portuguese, my English has been like, when you, you know, give it a start. I didn't give it a start until I was fully happy, like in my heart.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great advice, especially for right now, as you know, I'm sure people are wondering, is this the right time? Is there ever going to be a right time? And you know, with all the existing circumstances as they are, I'm sure it's not an easy decision. So Jenny, do you want to talk a bit about just, you know, what advice you would give to founders who might be wondering, you know, is it appropriate to be sending out emails right now and meeting with investors and just feeling kind of stuck and hesitating on what to do next to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as Camila said, it's a really personal decision. I think every founder that we've partnered with, it was an important moment and milestone for them, because you're taking on a partner, and it's really, you're committing to those people for a long time. We always say, you know, a partnership is like a marriage, because you're really committing for years and years and years, and you're accountable to each other, and you're kind of in it together. And when it's the first time where you're bringing on a partner, you know, a co-owner in your business, that's a big step and a big decision. So I think having conversations and meeting people is really important to get to know investors before you take that leap together. So I would always say, and we love to do this too, is to get to know people well in advance of making a decision to do a deal together. Because a big part of that partnership really is having the alignment of vision of where we really trying to go in the long term. And if we are committed to that long-term vision and we know what the objectives are of all the people around the table, then we can navigate things like the situation we're in right now and all the bumps along that come along the way if we're really committed to that same, long-term objective. But that takes time to develop that type of dialogue with somebody. I think for investors, understanding that this is very personal to founders. They've been building these businesses for years and years and years. And so having that deeper connection and understanding is critical at the outset. So I don't think it's a bad time for an entrepreneur to think about meeting with investors and starting to have those conversations. I think the interesting thing that I found in my world of kind of talking to other investors and seeing how other people are approaching the pandemic is people really are looking at what's going to happen next year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, not just how do I value this business today with the headwinds that almost every business is facing, but where is this really going to go? Because we will come out of this. So I don't think people should be worried that entrepreneurs are only or investors are only kind of near-term focused. I think people really do have that understanding that this is, we're playing a long game here. But that personal connection is really important. I would say that's for any entrepreneur thinking about taking on a partner, partners behave very differently. Investors behave very differently and have different types of timeline and objectives and how they work. Some people like to be very hands-on and provide support, and others want to be more hands-off. So what are you looking for, and kind of getting a sense for what different types of investors bring to bear, and also reference checking them is a good idea too. Call other entrepreneurs that have worked with those investors, and that's really where you'll get, the real story.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome advice. As we are wrapping up, I'd love to go around and hear first from Ryan and Adam. If you were to tell yourselves as you were starting out, the biggest thing you wish you had known at the jump, what would that be?
I think that's a difficult question because I think there's a lot of things that I would tell myself, but a lot of it would be to concentrate on enjoying the journey of it, right? Because Ryan and I and our team in general, not just us, has been able to so much of our dreams through building this brand. And I think a lot of times, especially if where we're at now and whatnot, is you don't necessarily think about how lucky you are to have created this moment for yourself. Because I only know from my personal experiences. I can't speak to anything that anybody else has done. And so with how lucky and I think grateful and thankful we should be that we've gotten this far. And again, we've only skimmed the surface in terms of what's possible. And when you started from such a small place, like if you saw what our first office, like we started in our dorm room, if you saw what our first office looked like versus the world that we've built today, it's polarizing. It's so different. And so I think that you're constantly in competition as an entrepreneur. You have to push yourself. You have to push your team. You have to continue to get better, that you don't focus on those milestones. So anytime any new entrepreneur, somebody that's going into a new path asked me the advice I would give myself the same advice, is appreciate those wins, because wins lead to more wins, and then understand why those losses happen, and then course correct as quick as you possibly can, because you're going to make mistakes. It's impossible to hold yourself to a level of excellence where you won't make any mistakes. But if you learn from those mistakes and you also learn and appreciate from those wins, it can become compounding. And so I think that's something, I think Ryan and I are much, much better at that today. And I appreciate my mindset as it pertains to that. But I think early on, we were so wrapped up in the grinding aspect. Like there's so much ground to cover and we have to keep going no matter what at all times. So I think that for me, the one piece of advice I would say is make sure you concentrate on those wins, you appreciate them, because they can come very quickly, but they can also come few and far between. So that's what gives you the energy to keep going and gives you the excitement. And your team wants to celebrate too. Like whether you think it or not, like you need to make everybody feel great about the accomplishments, because you're only as strong as your team. And so I think that's something we've done a really, really good job of. But it's any new entrepreneur. That's what I would say. And that's what I would tell myself back in 2009.
Awesome. I love that. Just make sure you enjoy it. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
And for me, it's kind of along the same lines, but the two key metrics, and I think like Payal, you referenced this when you were talking about how like everyone will talk about how much money you've raised, or either the revenue or employees and all that stuff. The two most important things for you to define are like what is happiness and what is success, because it's different for everyone. And if you have those things that are driving you, you're going to make the decisions that, yes, maybe it doesn't lead to the most revenue, but you and your company are going to be really happy where you are. As we go along, have really started to understand, like, what is it that makes us happy? What is it that we qualify as success? And those things bring everyone, like, honestly, a lot more joy. And so, like, you think in your mind, like, the first time I get my first $1 million order, like, that's going to be the craziest thing. And it is, and then it's not, because it becomes what your business is. Whereas, like, for us, we just created our flagship at the Grove, the World of APL. That's a moment where you created something, the happiness it brings, everything that went into it. It's a process that it's not quantifiable in a number, but you see it, you feel it, you experience it. Those are the things that for us, like, that brings happiness. That's success to me. And so obviously having a business that is too, but like that's the thing that we're all super proud of. And so understanding that, it changes everything. And so just keep that in mind from the beginning. Think about what's going to make you happy. Think about what's going to be success to you, and then follow that. That's what you should follow.
Wonderful. Awesome. Camila, you've made great use of the platform that you have. What would you tell people who look at what you've achieved and want to follow a similar path?
I would say follow your heart. One thing that I've thought about this since I was not a little girl, but a teenager. I had a dark moment in my life where I struggled to accept myself. And it was after realizing how blessed I am with the simple things in life that it made me stronger, and it made me believe in myself and believe that I could dream big. So yes, I come from a small town from Brazil. I had very limited access to the world and things. And here I am today, like, speaking this panel with you guys. So believe in yourself, believe that you are capable of doing and being anyone you want to be in this life. And, if you have big dreams, look at yourself in the mirror and say, yes, I am going to accomplish them. Because you can have those big dreams, but if you don't believe in yourself and in those dreams, it's not going to happen. So my biggest advice is to believe in yourself and believe that you can be whoever you want to be. I think that is going to lift you up on anything you are set to do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Payal, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned in the past 6 months to this year that you are going to carry with you going forward as you're making decisions, and what would you say, like, that is going to be your guiding force?
Well, so I had a baby at the beginning of this year, which has completely like transformed everything. So I feel like I'm living in like a complete different reality than most people. But I mean, I would just echo what everyone's saying. And I really think at the end of the day, in moments like this, you lock back into your why more than ever. And, it's what gets you through the hard moments. It's what's really driving you for the good moments. And I think if you lose track of what that why is, you start reacting instead of really planning. And so I think, like, the number one thing, and, this has obviously been a part of the core of Classpass over these 10 years, but, I think as a human being, it's also just made me think back to what's my purpose? What do I want to be as a mother, as a human being on earth today, and what do I want to lead my day with? And I think you can't lose sight of that in your company, and you can't lose sight of that in yourself. And, for me, I think when you start a company, I started it because I've danced my whole life. And there's been moments in the journey of my company where I've stopped dancing. And, this year, if anything, I'm like, after having a baby, I was like, I got to get back in and dancing. I got to get back to why I started my company. So I remember why I did all this, and I think it's easy to lose sight of that. And whatever you do when you're starting your company in those moments, like, find a way to connect back to that heart, right? What Camila was saying, like, it's the heart is what pushes you through those hard, difficult, challenging times. And you can't lose sight of that, even though it's going to be hard and you're not going to find any time in your life for yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, you're never going to make it, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And, you know, we're just in sort of like level 1 with this pandemic. So there's a lot more levels to this, right? So we're going to get through it. But like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so you have to really be in it for the long haul. I think, you know, as Jenny was saying, like, this is really about when people are looking at companies, it's not about a year or two. I mean, I think when we all probably started our companies, we didn't realize that we'd be here 10, 15 years later talking about the same thing. But if anything, like, your commitment to it just grows stronger and stronger. It's like a child in a way. It's like this thing that you're nurturing and you're growing, and every part of the way you learn about yourself and you learn more about the company, and you just have to keep sticking with it and remember once again why you started it.
Mhm.
Great. Well, that's an amazing note to end off on. I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining today, and everyone for tuning in. I really enjoyed the conversation and learned a lot, and hope the best for all you guys.
Thank you.
Hey guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks Revolve for having us.
Thank you, Revolve.
Thanks, Revolve.